All right. Well, good afternoon or evening, Terps. My name is Jeff Williams. I'm the Managing Director and Chief Engagement Officer with the Alumni Association. But tonight, I am your Camp Diamondback Camp Counselor. We are excited to have you join us here today for today's session on tips on improving your pictures with Terp alumna Lisa Helfert. This program is part of the Alumni Association's summer program, Camp Diamondback. Keep an eye out on the event calendar for a summer full of virtual programs for alumni and also a few for kids if you have any kids or grandchildren that might be interested in participating. Today's program will be run by alumna Lisa Helfert. Lisa's photographs capture the human moments, portraits, special events, everyday life, and even set up photo shoots that can render photographs to send a message about an organization or person's identity and brand. Whether it's an exciting event or routine event, a typical headshot or unique portrait, photojournalistic or manufactured, Lisa's purpose is to create a message defined by you. Lisa's worked as a photographer in the DC area for over 20 years, and she's recently traveled to California to photograph the Dancing Doctor in return, and hopes to travel to the Middle East soon to photograph an archaeological dig site near Petra. She's also a frequent guest at Alumni Association events as our photographer of choice. So if any of you have been to Alumni Association events, you might recognize Lisa from there. So again, please feel free to keep your videos on, but make sure that you are muted with your audio until the breakout sessions. We will have 3 different breakout sessions throughout the program today. To unmute yourself, you just use the bottom left button where it says mute. You can click it on and off. But again, during Lisa's presentation, please help keep yourself muted as to not create any distractions. So at the end, we will have some Q&A. So we will be sure to address any questions that come up. But with no further ado, I will turn it over to Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, hi, I'm Lisa Helfert, and as Jeff mentioned, I'm an alumni of the University of Maryland, and I will be giving you some tips on photography. I'm going to go over 2 things, composition and lighting, and the lighting will kind of take a little tour of campus. I actually started my career at University of Maryland as the sports photographer, so you may have seen me there. And then I've continued doing my work all over the area with many different clients, as Jeff has mentioned. I'm going to start today with this quote from Dorothy Lang. She's a Depression-era photographer. I think you've probably seen this iconic photograph. And she says, "The camera is an instrument that teaches people how to see without a camera." So basically what she's saying that as you study photography, you learn to look at the world in a different way. You notice objects, you notice people differently, you notice lighting, and then you want to take, of course, more photos. And then, of course, you see more. So it's a great cycle of learning and realizing things. You get a great sense of heightened awareness. And I'm sure that's kind of why you're here. You want to learn how to experience all of that. So I'm giving an example of this. This is a picture taken from a garden I was visiting. I'd been taking pictures all day. And I sat down with my friend who hadn't been taking photos, but I'm the one that noticed all the little details. You know, here's a turtle, there's the flowers, here's this strange ball, here's a bullfrog. And so the same thing will start happening, obviously, when you start taking pictures. But then what you really want to know is how to actually improve those photos. And that's what we're going to work on today. And that we'll do that when we come back from the breakout room. We will talk about composition. So in the breakout room, you can share your name, what college you went to, or what your photography interest might be.
Are we all back from the breakout room?
Great.
Rooms will be closing in just about 5 seconds, so we'll be getting restarted in just a moment.
Okay.
All right, I think we're ready to go.
Okay, welcome back. We're going to talk some about composition now, and this is a great quote. Beauty can be seen in all things, but seeing and composing the beauty is what separates a snapshot from a photograph. As you can see, this is just kind of a snapshot. How would I improve upon that? And generally, there's a couple rules of composition that really help guide people when they first start in photography. And it's very important to realize these are just guides to help you. And it's just a start. And one is the rule of thirds and the golden spiral. And if you want to look up, there's all kinds of videos on the internet to teach you more. The rule of thirds is basically you take your frame and you divide it into 9 different segments. You place your subject on one of these points of interest or along one of the lines. And the idea is just to get away from putting that subject right in the middle. Because that creates a very static photograph. And here's an example. See, there's a great picture of this boy. He's very cute. It's really nice. But, you know, it's kind of static. You're just stuck there. Your eye is not looking around at anything. You're not looking anymore. But if you kind of step back and take a broader photo and put him off in the corner, you can see so much more of what's happening. The photograph has a lot more depth to it. You look at more details. This says 2019. You kind of start thinking about what's going on, like what is this story all about? And you're curious much more about him and you want to stay with that photograph. And you want to hope to do that when you start taking photos too. Now here's another example. This is just some, I came and I took a flower. These are the hydrangeas at the University of Maryland right now blooming. You know, it's a nice photo. I got the picture with the bee on it and you think, oh, success. But you could actually improve that photo if you kind of look at it from a different perspective. If you put it here along this line, you can see that now you're looking at the entire field of hydrangeas. You're kind of curious. You ask more questions about this picture. Where is this? What's happening? Is this bee going to fly this direction? You know, what are these leaves? And in that way, it becomes, you know, a little bit more dynamic. Now, I'm relating a lot to it about a story. So in a photograph, a lot of times you're telling a little bit about a story. So I'm going to take a few photos from a trip I took to Jordan. These are for Dr. Andrew Smith. He's also a graduate of the University of Maryland, and he has a project in Jordan. And he had me photograph pictures for a grant so that he could allow the locals to give historical tours of the area. So this is one of the locals, and it's a great picture of him, but it really doesn't tell the story that Andrew needed for the photograph. So in this case, we kind of want to show a lot more. So when you're doing the rule of thirds, you see a lot more. You ask yourself a lot more questions. There's mountains. He's obviously in the mountains of Jordan. You know that now. You're kind of interested in that. You see the depth. You see this is like the whole camel. You see why his arm is on the camel. It looks more like he's guiding the camel and not just hugging the camel. So you think, okay, he's going to take us on a trip here. And that's the intention. He's supposed to take camel trips on people to Petra. Now, the rule of thirds also helps in another way that's very important. Often when you first start with photography, you put your photograph right in the middle, right the horizon, right through the middle of the frame. And again, that's a little bit static. So you're very much encouraged to kind of change that. And when you do that, you can get a more dynamic picture. So in this case, we've cropped so that these people are in the subject of this. And all of a sudden, their interaction is what's interesting about this photograph. And they're looking out over this landscape. And before, the landscape was a little bit, you didn't even notice that was a landscape. And now you can kind of see that it has a lot of depth. And this is very important for Andrew too, because it's about how the locals are teaching people about their landscape and the world that they live in. So again, this photograph also tells a story that I was trying to accomplish, whereas this was not. Okay, the next photo, it's important to realize you just don't always cut out the sky, okay? Because this also has the same issue, but a different solution. Right here, this very teeny person is one of the students collecting data on the dig. And I photographed it because I was trying to impressively say how far she had hiked up, but really that wasn't really the point. Really, I think the point is that she's collecting data on people who lived within this really much more mountainous terrain in the desert. And that's really what's interesting in the story that, again, this photograph is supposed to tell. So this rule of thirds, a lot of times this grid that I showed in the beginning is on different editing software, and you can use it to help you a lot when you go to crop, because it's not like every time you go out you get bam the best photo sometimes. And this is something from Maryland Day. This is the Alumni Association booth, and you can see the grid and kind of like nothing's being focused on, but really what the point of this photograph is that they're giving away things at the booth and people are walking away with it. So now that she's the subject, you kind of can see what is happening a lot better. It's a lot more dynamic, a lot more interesting. This kind of looks like a blob. So you can use this grid and you can find it within your programs. But if you don't have a program, you know, it's right on your computer, right on your camera. So I don't know if you see the grid on your camera, and if you don't, you can actually find it. And I can show you right here if you have an iPhone. I don't know if you can see this in the camera. You can see grid on, grid off, and you can toggle it on or off. And then you can see on the grid, on your camera, there is a grid. And it's very useful when you first start because you can really see that rule of thirds. And what you also have on the screen that's really useful is sometimes, you know, if you're not focusing on the center, your camera won't focus on it. But if you touch your screen, it'll focus exactly where you want it to. It's a great, it's great that the phone does that. Okay, so now I've been talking a lot about how things are static and that you need to have more, you know, energy or movement. And then people will say, well, you do that with lines. And, but you know, most people have no idea what that means, but that's what I'm going to try to show you here. It's kind of simple. A line can be anything. A line can be very literal like this that takes you to the subject and that brings you, it creates some movement. It could be something a little less literal, like this is from Maryland Day. It can be actual, like you just pretend like you imagine you saw the bubble going by. The movement can be like a line of people. This one's going up. The lines used within the landscape, it's quite often they use roads and, you know, ridges or fences, and this is leading backwards. This kind of creates a much more, gives this photograph a lot more depth. The line doesn't have to be straight to create this. This is kind of a bit of a swirl like this, and it's more of a spiral. And that kind of takes us to the next concept, and that's called the golden spiral. Now, this is more of a mathematical concept, whereas the rule of thirds is more of an art concept. Now, I don't really know that I fully understand what all of this, you know, ratio stuff and how it works out, but if it helps you understand, please take a big screenshot of that. But the basic idea behind it is that this mathematical equation repeats itself in nature. So because of that, it's very pleasing naturally to humans to experience, because it'll be seen within roses, it'll be seen within shells, and also it's you know, seen in a wave, and you can see this artist actually took advantage of that. And the part of what is so appealing about it is that as a mathematical algorithm, you know, it repeats itself. So that continuousness, even though it's not literal like this, it makes it a lot more dynamic, interesting photo. And you wonder, well, how does that work on a flat, you know, kind of thing? So these are all your frames like this. It can be a vertical. You want to put your subject somewhere like this, and you want to have lines lead to your subject. And around the subject, you'll have a swirl. Now this is like, you don't have to follow this exactly, but it just kind of gives you an idea that you want some lines to lead to your subject. And as you practice, you'll get closer to seeing that. Now this is a photograph that I took at the British International School, and really their point to this photograph, it's all about interaction. You know, they want to say that the students are interacting with the teacher. So all these lines, you can see she's looking this way, She's looking this way, he's looking down, this hand is moving, and then they kind of all move like this. And you spend a lot more time within a photograph like this than if they were all looking off in different directions. Now this photograph is a part of a program called OES, which is Office of Extended Studies. They have something for this is for young scholars on campus. So this again, it has the lines moving in. See, her hand is moving in and she's a subject, and they kind of swirl around. You can see this moves in, this moves in, this kind of moves in. And it makes you kind of stay there within the image. I'm gonna give you one last example of this. This is adoption day downtown at the district court, and he's being adopted. He's the subject. You can see this person's looking, this person's looking, this person's looking, and he's looking back. So this is an element of them kind of looking, and you see you kind of stay there. And his hands kind of being together like that makes it very interesting, an interesting way to kind of tie up that. And it makes you stay with it. It makes you wonder, what is his story? What's going on? And that's what you want within a photograph. Now, I presented these rules, but you've got it real. You can just break rules. I mean, you don't really have to always do them. And this is just a guideline to get started. And you got to kind of think when you're starting that photography is just something that you play. You know, you really just want to play and have fun. I'm going to give you this example from an assignment I did to show how breaking the rules works and how people actually use photographs, so you don't have to worry so much about these rules. This is an assignment taken of a maternity nurse at Sibley Hospital. And you can see right away, I went and I was using that rule of thirds. She's in the subject right there. But, you know, actually the magazine didn't even use this. They cropped this off right here. And they use this for a page in the vertical, so they didn't even follow that. And then this is another photograph from this, and this is more of like the swirl concept. Because with the foot being the subject, meaning because it's a small baby, you know, that's kind of the interesting thing is to look at the foot. They didn't use that photo either. They ended up using this, which breaks all the rules. I mean, I started out with the rule of thirds, but because the baby burped, she looked at the mom and they're laughing, but it still works. And this is the photo that they used. So, you know, if there's a good moment, you know, of course, take the moment, and you don't want to lose the moment. And maybe you have another chance to reframe it in a better composition, but I always encourage people to get those interesting moments still. Okay. We're going to go now to back to the breakout sessions, and you can talk about that. I think you can share photos if you want to, and you can, or if you don't have a photo to share, you can just talk about good places. Maybe you've taken photographs, and you can talk about if you've used these rules before, if you just break the rules, and why that still works out for you. Here we go. Okay, here we go. There's my presentation. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. So now we're going to talk about the concepts related, so a few things related to light, because photography literally means drawing with light, and this is how you say it in Greek, and you can, if you know how to pronounce that, that is great. But I thought it might be helpful to some people. George Eastman, he's the father of photography. He said, "Embrace light, admire it, love it. Above all, know light. Know it for all you are worth, and you will know the key to photography." And this is like really true. So we're going to kind of look at some lighting situations when you go to take some of the most iconic things at Maryland. And of course, this is Testudo. Either people get their photo taken with Testudo, or they're taking a picture of Testudo. So I thought I would start there, because these photos I literally took during quarantine. I was there for an hour, and both times there were like 3 or 4 people there. Okay. So Erica, she's one of the Alumni Association staff. She came out and met me there. This is about 9:30 in the morning. And so the first thing when you get there, especially in the morning, the sun is hitting directly McKeldin straight on. And so you would want to have, you know, it's a great time to take basically Testudo in the morning. But when you go to take that photo, you might want to start with the sun to your back. And that's always a great guideline when you're taking pictures, because then that way, you know, the person won't be backlit. They won't have any weird shadows. So this is the first picture we took. Now, that's not the most exciting photo. So I had her move a little. I moved a little and she moved a little. We created kind of a side light, a Rembrandt light. You can see that's a little better of a photo. So I always encourage you, whether it's with Testudo or anything, you can get that first photo, the safe shot, and then maybe move a little and get a little more interesting picture. This shows kind of, that's also kind of follows with the rule of thirds. Now, the challenge with campus is you can't get everything you like, right? When you show up, because then when you look down at the administration building, it's completely backlit. So we're going to get back to that. We're going to go back down there and try to solve that problem. But I'm just trying to remind everyone that time of day is really important when you're planning to take a photo. You need to know what is lit up and what's not when you go out to take a picture, especially if it involves a building. Okay, so you may just say, I'm going to go to the shade and take some pictures. Well, the shade, open shade, definitely can create some harsh shadows. Here, Erica looks kind of, I mean, it's kind of funky, but it, you know, it's okay. I found a way to make it work. This is me, and I have big spots all over me. I mean, it's a great memory, but it's not like the best photo. So I suggest with shade, Erica and I found a very large shady area. You want to find a shady area that doesn't have lots of little bits of light poking through, and you get a nice soft light as a result, and it looks very pretty. The next thing everyone wants to get a picture of when they come to campus, of course, no, I'm sorry, I apologize. We're going to first go through this. We went back here back to those hydrangeas to get a picture, and this is something that comes up really frequently when you take pictures in the shade, is people's glasses. They get reflections because they're looking out at the light. So one way to solve that problem is sometimes they're tipping their head up just a little bit, and you can have them move it down. Now, hopefully it doesn't make them look funny. I mean, she looks okay, but some people, that kind of movement is not a good idea. So in that case, you can have them move their head to another way. Outdoors, those reflections can be challenging. Okay, the next thing most people get pictures of when they come to campus, of course, is the columns. I love the columns too. I always want that too. But now they have quite a bit of interesting light, and it always changes throughout the day. Here you can see she's backlit, and that can be a challenge, and there's big side light. So I recommend that when you go to photograph these columns, is let it be your chance to kind of experiment. Here's a very hard side light. It's probably a bit too dramatic for what we want. Now we went back to that Rembrandt light, and that's more interesting. So you just have the person move around, keep trying to get some interesting things. And if you don't want to be so funky, I would recommend going all the way to the other side of the column for the softer light, where you can avoid all of the harsh shadows and use the shaded side of the column. Some of my favorite places on campus with the columns really is this one, which is the Edward St. John building. And the other one that I really like is Marymount Hall. They both are really, really nice places to take photos. Now here we go back. We're back at the administration building, and we have that big sun glare and the big backlight, and I'm sure everyone has taken a photo with this, and it's kind of frustrating. You can make it into something kind of really funky and interesting if you want to, but for the most part, you just want to get a picture of your friend in front of a building. So what I recommend is kind of getting a little closer to the building, kind of change your position, and then you can use like a book, or you can use your hand, and you kind of block it out. I've had assistants block it out for me with a book, you know, just to block it out for that photograph. And then you can get at least something to take home. But what I really love about the administration building is in the morning, it is really nice at the top of the steps. You can get a great picture with the columns, and then you look out over the whole entire campus. So it's always important to any location you go to. I mean, it can be frustrating, there can be problems. You can always get another picture. And I mean, that can also count with the landscape. We were talking about landscapes. There's always another place to go to try to get another picture. Now, I'm sure most people, when they come to campus, what they really want is to see this. So they really want to get that picture at golden hour where the fountain is pretty and everything's lit up. And that is usually golden hour. And I'm sure everyone's heard about golden hour. I mean, golden hour is always a different time because it is basically 1 hour after sunrise and 1 hour before sunset. And it's a great thing to just try to see one time. And it creates a nice, warm, natural light. It makes your photos look really, really, really pretty. I mean, you can Google to find out the time of day. And if you're really into landscapes and architecture, I mean, it really lightens up. It makes your you know, the greens look kind of golden. It makes an architecture kind of golden. For people, it can work, but it's kind of mixed. So of course I came and I tried to get a nice picture with Ken of this golden hour picture. And of course it didn't work out because we got bad weather. So one thing to do is always check out the weather before you leave the house. If you have to take photos, that's always great advice, but you can always make the best of it. I mean, the shade is not so bad. There's a few things that you need to keep in mind. Testudo looks great in the shade. It looks great, obviously, in the clouds this time of day. The thing about the clouds is that it creates a soft light, which is great. And soft is great, but soft is also a very subtle thing. And when things are really subtle, that means you have to look even closer to see kind of the difference in what's happening. In the earlier photos, you saw that it was a very, very harsh light. So it's very clear that there's a problem with the photo. But here, I will give you some examples of what to look at. And the same thing applies to objects and to your dog and to a building too. Okay, so I had Kent stand in the same place and I moved around and took pictures of him facing from different directions. So this first one, when we're looking north, he doesn't look so great. His eyes are all dark. Now, when we turned west, which was towards the same thing as Testudo there, that's actually a pretty nice lighting. I mean, he has deep set eyes, so it kind of just looks, in this case, it's you can still see that. And then when we went looking south, we got a really nice kind of soft side lighting. And this time, what's nice about side light when it's soft is not so harsh and dramatic. It's a little bit more pretty. So I wanted to kind of try to use that. So I went to, I want to go back to the hydrangeas to get a picture, but it's got some challenges. When you look at it, you really don't see that there's a light difference, but when you really look closely, it's dark there, it's dark here, and I'll kind of illustrate how that works. So here he is. This is the original kind of space we were in, and you have him turn to the side, and you can see it really kind of works really well. But then as I get him to move closer and closer to the flowers where the light is more mixed, even though it's not that much of a light difference, you can really see. Now, this kind of looks more like an album cover rather than like a nice happy picture. Here, when you move back even closer to the flowers where I really wanted to go, you know, it's not really that usable. I mean, he's dark, the background's light, kind of doesn't work. You can find ways when you get farther along in photography to kind of modify that, but probably just for a trip to the campus, you know, that's not really worth it. So before we go to another location, I kind of want to go over what is good times to, if you come back to campus, to take pictures of things. Testudo is pretty much always great, except for in the middle of the day. It's a great picture in the morning, it's nice and sunny. In the afternoon, it's shady. The administration building is great in the afternoon. You get that kind of iconic photo. In the morning, you can get up there in the columns and take some nice pictures. And, you know, the columns at Edward St. John and Marymount Hall are all great locations and a great chance to just kind of experiment with light, even just to photograph the columns. You'll look at all these interesting kind of, you know, you'll see a lot of the interesting lines that I talked about, a lot of different shapes. It's a lot of fun. Okay, well, there is, by the way, as we know, near the Riggs Alumni Center, another Testudo, and this again is that kind of very, very soft light that we all want to get a picture of. But in actuality, we probably are more likely to show up at a party like here at homecoming, in which, you know, half of the area is very, very dark, the other half is very bright, and but you really want to get a lot of good pictures of your friends. And so, you know, what I suggest is to kind of go back to what I talked about with Erica, with the picture with Erica, is just to make sure the sun is to your back. And you can ask your friends to move, and you want to keep them all in the same quality of light, you know, either all in the sun or you put them all in the shade like this. But I actually have people move all the time so they're facing the right way. And I even asked Testudo to move. He's very nice and he'll help you out. So here is, and this is one that's just in the shade. So it's very clean picture, and that's what I really recommend. Now, if you go inside Riggs Alumni Center, and this is Jeff Nash he's the founder of Moms. He went to Maryland. Um, a lot of indoor locations, just like Riggs, are quite bright now. They have a lot of available light, and you actually don't need a flash. I mean, when you go to these type of places, you can easily take a photo as long as it's a pretty sunny day, so you don't have to worry. And I would say likewise, for a lot of modern buildings, it's kind of the same thing. They've now put a lot of daylight fluorescent lights in these buildings that are really, really bright. And just like this picture was taken for Young Discovery, which is also another program with the Office of Extended Studies. And this is just taken with available light. It's very easy in buildings now to do this sort of thing. Now, if the building, though, doesn't have this kind of new modern light, which can happen, you can really take advantage of a lot of other things. You can take advantage of a window. So this is just a window, and that creates actually a really, really nice light. This is more of kind of like a Rembrandt-ish kind of light. This is in a barn. Now, barns are really, really dark, as probably anyone who's been in one would know. And this is a very, very kind of a little bit of a harder light, but he is faced towards the light, and you can see how that kind of really works. Now, I've seen a lot of pictures where people use iPads, they use laptops, they use these huge, these Macs are great for getting good photos. You can use that. Cell phones are great. This is a really fun photo. You can get really creative. And I think the more that you have fun with light, like the more that you can see possibilities, it's kind of easier to just kind of have fun with this. This is from an event from the University Systems of Maryland at the Baltimore Aquarium. And as you know, it's really dark there, but you can still get a lot of really fun photos. I just found some really bright areas, and the kids were playing here. They're looking at the fish. You can get some interesting things. I got a nice family looking, and that could be your family if you wanted to get a picture with them. Or, this type of thing, this person is completely backlit, but you get the context of them looking at the fish. That would be a great picture for you to get. Now, you don't always arrive to a situation with the best lighting. He showed up a little late for the photo shoot time, and you can see it was all patchy and blotchy, and he really wanted to get an interesting picture with Testudo. So we just kind of changed it up. He was really creative. And he kind of turned and looked this way. And I think it kind of created a really interesting photo. So you should never give up if the lighting is not like perfect. There's always, some kind of solution. You can just keep looking. So for the past, I've been talking a little bit, I've been talking about the lighting. So I kind of want to describe each kind. Because the big thing about lighting when you start playing with it is that it definitely creates the mood of your photograph. You can see from the photographs that I've already just gone through, this is what's happening. That frontal lighting, which I've described about, it's very clean, very straightforward. It's great for a group picture. It's great for, you in front of Testudo. Then we've seen the Rembrandt lighting. It's a little more pretty and kind of classically beautiful. And then we've also seen the side lighting. And of course, that's very dramatic. And then we've also seen that on a cloudy day, the light gets very diffuse, it's soft, and it makes pictures like a lot more neutral. They have a little less pizzazz. And I'm gonna kind of end with one example of how this plays out when you're trying to do something. So this was an assignment for Arlington Magazine, and this woman, teaches painting, Bob Ross painting. So she's a very happy, lighthearted person, and they want to get an image of her. And this is the first picture that I took, and it shows the light's just very straight on, and it works really well capturing who she is. So we thought, I thought I would try a couple other things. This is the Rembrandt lighting. It looks very classic. You can see it's from the side. Then I went even more extremely from the side. She looks more like an artist like this. But ultimately, the picture they used was this picture, because this really does suit her personality and the mood of who she is. As much as I created all these different other photos, it's not really the right mood or feeling. And that was mostly dictated by light. And so you can see how much light can affect the mood of a photograph. Okay, so we're gonna go now to the breakout rooms to share more photos. If you have any other photos, or you can talk about light, or you can talk about where you might wanna go on campus to take some photographs.
Welcome back, everyone. Lisa, apologies again. I put you in the breakout room. So I think, Lisa, if you can unmute yourself, we can finish up
Okay.
the Q&A.
Okay, yeah, I have the question I put up on the screen. I don't know if it's if you see it, you can also just, I put my email up there.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, yeah, so if you want to contact me later. So please, any questions?
And I'll actually go ahead and get started because we did get a question come in earlier. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them directly in the chat. You can send them to everybody or send them directly to me, Jeff Williams. I'm actually under UMD Alumni Association. The first question comes from Cindy Sweet. Lisa, are there any tips for this issue? How do you capture better pictures at night with your iPhone when it normally turns out blurry and the lights don't get in focus like the one you showed of the cell phones being help at the conference all lit up? That was cool.
I'm not sure which kind of cell phone that you have, but I don't know. I guess I would need to go back and forth to find out what kind of cell phone that you have. So sometimes there's a limit to how, with a cell phone, to what you can do. So it's possible that the cell phone won't register things at night. But what you can do at night, if you want to get the photo, is do try to go to as close as you can to any kind of light source. It could even be like a street light, but make sure the street light isn't, you aren't facing it directly. Like use it like it's the sun or something. And you might have a little more luck with that, when you're photographing people. And that's what I would suggest first. And even with, and you could try, if you have an iPad or something, it can actually light a person up pretty well. You can try something like that if it's just a person.
Great. I got another question here about lighting. So we'll move into that one. It's from Karen. Can you please tell us how you can achieve the 3/4 light? I believe that was the Rembrandt lighting, the 3/4 light. Can you share how can the group achieve that lighting style?
Yes. Okay. So I think the easiest way to see that is maybe just to go to a window and turn the lights off in the room and make it a pretty dark room. And if you kind of have a person move through that window, you can see that, and have them move around, you can kind of see that. So if you face the window directly and look out, then that would be side light if you're standing sort of next to them. If you have them move slowly and turn, and it's 3/4, then that would be Rembrandt light. So basically it's a 3/4. I don't know if this is making sense. So side light is basically directly from the side, and 3/4 means you're moving 3/4 from the light. The best way to see that probably is in a window. You can kind of play with it a little bit and see how you can achieve that.
Yeah, so maybe if you get to where the light is dead on, straight on, and then move kind of like you just described, 3/4, that might be the best way to achieve that. Would you agree?
Yes, exactly.
Great. This question is from Kelly McBride Gill. Lisa, what is your preferred non-phone camera to work with? Do you use the same one for all situations?
For the most part, I have Nikons, and I use them for a lot of situations. I just recently, probably about 1.5 years ago, got a mirrorless camera. It's also another Nikon brand, and it's a lot lighter, and it's a lot, and it takes video a lot easier. So I am more likely to use that in that kind of situation. But the Nikons I'm more likely to use, it's a D4. I am more likely to use that for some of the events and portraits I take. Has a little better skin tone. But a lot of the cameras are the new cameras that are consumer cameras are just really great. And the best way to find one that you like actually is, the internet. I mean, and just keep researching what you need. I mean, people have written so many great articles and so many great resources for that. But the consumer level entry cameras are pretty great right now, and you can take wonderful pictures with them.
So thank you. We've got a couple questions about Flash, one from Anna and another from Deborah about how do you determine when to use Flash and when you shouldn't use Flash?
I think, well, you have to use Flash if the room is really dark. Sometimes when you go into indoor spaces, it really is dark. And I think you can, be familiar with that kind of space. You're at a conference or somewhere downtown or anywhere. There's a lot of rooms that are just too dark, and you really have to use a flash. Otherwise, the picture will probably be blurry, but even that, it would probably be a strange color. A lot of times they have a lot of weird yellow lighting. Another time that I would really say to use a flash is actually sometimes when you have that mixed lighting I'm talking about. Like if you came to campus and tried to take test studio in the middle of the day, the light's going to be really mixed, and you might want to put your flash on because that would even out the light. I think those kind of situations. Usually when the room is too dark, and if it's outside, it's because it's the light is too mixed, and that's what I would recommend.
Great, thank you. Got a question from Stacy, and this was a challenge, but maybe you have some good tips.
Okay.
How can you get better shots of small children who refuse to look at the camera at the same time?
I think the best way to get them to look at the camera at the same time is to say that you're going to give them ice cream after the photo shoot. That usually is the best thing. I mean, I think also, honestly, with kids, like I used to photograph weddings, and occasionally I still do now. And I always tell people just not, when the kids are especially under 4, you just can't expect them to do anything you want if you want to have a good day, So they're going to do what they want, so.
Yeah, I hear babies and dogs are the hardest to photograph, right? So another question here from Drew, and I think I can help answer this. Are the pictures Lisa takes at alumni events property of UMD, or can we download them for free? And actually, so all of, we mentioned Lisa as our photographer of choice. We use her a lot throughout the year when we're in person for our events. And we put all of our pictures up on the University of Maryland Alumni Association Flickr account, which we have linked on our website. And all those you are able to download. And if you have a picture of yourself that you want to keep, please do so. So if you need a link to that account, please feel free to email me or one of my colleagues, and we can help send that over to you. Speaking of storing photographs, we had a question earlier. Lisa, do you have a preferred platform on where you can store your pictures? Is there anything that may be better than others for picture storage?
Yeah, I have a really big time machine that's connected to my computer that I have as a backup. I guess that's a little old school to have a hard copy backup, but I have drives that I have in my closet full of photographs. I used to put everything on DVDs and burn it, but obviously that's kind of old technology. I do have an online platform called Photo Shelter where I upload photos and leave them up for a while, and that can be a good one. Another one that's pretty great is Zenfolio. They also allow you to make a nice website, and you can get prints made through there. I would say that kind of technology has changed really fast. I mean, like Apple has some products and that sort of thing, but most photographers do have their always have a hard drive backup with photos.
Yeah, Great. And one last question. I think it's a good one to end on here. So it's from Tom Phelps. When you shoot the M traffic circle on campus, you stand to get the best image during the late afternoon?
Oh, wow. I'm trying to remember what I did. It's been a while since I've done that. I can't remember if that was a morning picture or an afternoon picture. I'm just trying to think about the campus. You know, that's a morning picture, actually. It's not an afternoon picture, I'm pretty sure. But
Yeah, I think that Campus Drive there is going west, I think.
yeah. So it's definitely a morning picture. And what I remember it being very difficult because, you know, the cars are coming because I've taken that picture before. So I've tried to move around to different parts of it. And some of it is the perspective you want. If you have a longer lens, you can be farther away. You can kind of zoom in and have a very compressed M. And if you want to have a wider picture, you could actually even take a wide angle lens and just get right there on the circle. And I guess I've done it a number of ways. I actually like the picture from the side a lot and not kind of like straight on. And I used to have a lot of pictures because it used to be something that was requested a lot. You could do a whole class on that M. I don't know, are they even keeping the M?
They are going to be keeping the M, but it'll be moving about probably 50 feet south of where it is.
Okay.
For those of you, if you haven't been to campus lately, it will be moving just about 50 yards south, 50 feet, 50 yards, something like that south, as we build the purple line, which will be major transportation improvement. So we are excited about that. And they have assured us that there will always be an M circle. Have a time when there's no M circle. In fact, there may be a period of time where there are 2 M circles.
Oh, nice.
Well, we have reached our time, and I just want to thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today. It was a really great, and I know I learned a lot. I hope everyone else did. And I want to thank all of our participants for joining us today. Again, this is part of our Camp Diamondback series. We have a series throughout the summer. We'll have fun virtual programs that you can sign up for. Make sure to check your email, and hope to see you at another program later this summer. Have a great day, stay healthy, and go Terps.
Go Terps.